everyone. My name is Charles Morris, and welcome to the Journey 2020. The journey is from me to you and from you to me so we can reach a higher level. That's what Dr. Robinson usually would say, because he is the one that usually opened the show. And Dr. Robinson hasn't been on the show now for quite some time. And I received a phone call. For those who are familiar with the Journey 2020. The Journey 2020 is going into its third season, third year. And I have been blessed over the years to have known Dr. Robinson. And I think I met Dr. Robinson through Dr. Charles English quite a few years ago. And for those who had been in my circle, many, many years ago when I was working with Orange County, Orange TV, having a teen talk show for a period of a little over 9 years, or right at 9 years, involving my producing of many events in television while I was with the county, with Orange County, Orange TV. And we kind of bonded, Dr. Robinson and I, along with Dr. Charles English, who passed away last year, unfortunately. But I say that in reference to when Dr. Robinson came up with the idea of wanting to do a show, I said, okay, fine, because we had done many shows previously when I was working, doing talk shows on the radio with WOKB, and again, Dr. Robinson coming on my show when I had my talk show. Since we started the show, he primarily would open the show, and then over the years, going on our third year, we have covered many topics, some funny, some not so funny. We hit all areas of life. And recently, in the past couple of months, Dr. Robinson moved into a new building. And with the new building came new opportunities and new blessings. And him being a psychiatrist, a psychologist, he has started to open up numerous new doors to offer new services with new people that are able to come into his office, who are providing services to the people here in Orange County and the surrounding areas. So with that being said, he is so backed up on doing so many things because whether you know it or not, we as a whole, as a country, have really, really serious problems and issues of understanding some of the mental illness that takes place in our society, especially law enforcement. They don't really do a good job of understanding some of the mental problems, mental illness that they run into sometimes. It's such a touchy subject in the sense that that's a whole nother show, because I don't think that they're really trained to deal with it, recognize it, or even want to cope with it, honestly. That doesn't mean every cop is that way, but I don't think their mind even know how to go that way at a particular time when sometimes it can be obvious that this person has a mental illness. They're more apt of just trying to deal with the situation at hand and resolve it and go home at night. So the going home at night, that part I get, definitely. But a lot of times, some of the circumstances and situations that they're running into people who have some mental type of illness. Not all, but a lot of times that they do. And with Dr. Robinson, he's now being able to offer even more services toward the people here in the Central Florida area. With that, I'm Charles Morris. I am one of the hosts of the shows. And it's going to be kind of difficult tonight because I'm actually doing the show tonight. And I just felt as if though I just wanted to talk and get some things off my chest, because things are kind of heavy for me right now. And so I just felt as if though I just needed to do this for myself. Unfortunately, my father just passed away. And so many people go what I'm going through right now. Many people go through this every day, and that is the preparation and trying to prepare to bury someone that you love or someone that's close to you, a relative or a friend, or someone that you love, someone that's dear in your heart. And for some of us, we all handle it differently. Well, because I'm older now, I'm able to deal with certain things in a certain way that I probably couldn't have a few years ago, of course. You know, my first death in the family that affected me the most, probably I should say the closest person that died in my family was my grandmother, the very first one. But I was 27, almost 28 years old when that happened. So one of the things that I always appreciated was that God didn't call her home while I was young, because I'm not quite sure how in the world I would have handled that. You know, I think about that all the time. I think about the fact that God kept her around when I was older, you know, because the impact on her as you know, when I was a child, when I was young, and what she meant to me and the difference she made in my life as a child, and thinking about, whoa, Lord, if that had happened when I was younger, I'm not quite sure what would have happened to me during that time. Now, over that time, my father just recently passed, and I have, during that time, like I said, I lost my grandmother. I've lost my mom in 2001, the day before the 9/11. She died on the 10th, so that was kind of a weird thing. So I've lost a brother, I've lost a sister, I've lost a few aunts, I've lost an uncle, a few uncles, and so on and so forth, that people that are part of my immediate family. So with that being said, now that I'm an older person and understanding God's will and God's way and believing what I believe, it's much easier to deal with the death of someone that you love. And it doesn't mean that you don't hurt. It doesn't mean that I don't miss my grandmother. I think about her, every 30 minutes of a day. My mom, and a day doesn't go by that you don't think about it. That's just the way it is. That's the way it's supposed to be. The funny thing is, my father, who's been bedridden for some time now, he had a stroke. He had a couple of strokes, and he was 86 years old. He would have been 87 this year. But he has been bedridden and was in a care, facility. Not necessarily the best in the world, but they looked after him. They brought him meals, and medically, I think that was kind of the best place for him under the circumstances and where he was living. But he had been bedridden for the last few years, and you would see him starting to go down, and I'll leave a lot out. There's a book that I'm writing that's going to go in depth about some things that transpired that should have taken place, that didn't take place. And I think once people read this book, they're going to be like, they're not going to believe it. Okay, they're just not going to believe what's in this book. They will not believe the people who took money from my father. There was things in place for him to be taken care of in a very nice way, but somebody took some money, somebody did some ungodly things, and which end up him going where he went and him dying the way that he did. And not that he died in a horrible way, because he died a very peaceful death. But that's not the purpose of me wanting to do the show tonight. Not to talk about that part of my father, but just to reflect and to dedicate this show to him, and to for those who and now that I thought about it, and I should have, and I didn't, because this was just off the top of my head. I wasn't going to do the show this evening. I was going to show a rerun, but I just wanted to sit and just kind of reflect and just talk about some things in general. Unfortunately, we've had one of the musical icons die, and Prince, who I'll always remember that song when the first time I want to be your lover. And I remember that song when it came out. I don't know if I'm dating myself, but I was headed off to college, and I was in college at the time. And I had an old girlfriend who loved Prince. She was crazy about Prince. As a matter of fact, she asked me if she could have Prince for Christmas. And I said, sure, I would love to give you Prince for Christmas. She was just crazy about Prince. She just thought Prince was, she just loved herself some Prince. And you know what, I'm gonna have to call her and just, there was another old friend of mine, Rhonda, who loved Prince. She used to do the purple thing, and I think at one time she may have painted her room purple. I think I walked in her room, she had some Prince stuff all over the place, and she loved Prince. And Prince was interesting from the standpoint that for myself and who I saw, because I've heard stories of Prince, and that was I heard Arsenio Hall and some of his guests talk about Prince from back in the day. This the old Arsenio Hall show, and they were talking about how Prince was actually supposedly, other than being a great musician, he was supposed to have been an okay basketball player as well. I can't imagine that, but they said that he was, according to the conversation that was on the Arsenio Hall show. They said that Prince was an okay basketball player. Wasn't great, but he was an okay basketball player that could really jump. You know, it's like, oh wow, really? That was a joke on Arsenio. But what I mean by watching and observing Prince, just having this conversation earlier, was watching him mature over his life, over his music, where he started out as an entertainer, as he grew and started to understand, I guess, that world. And I've heard the stories of how he got his name back, how it was taken from him, the name that his mother gave him, by the way, and how he had to fight to get it back, and how he really changed the music industry, not only for himself, but for so many others, based on his willingness not to give up, based on his willingness to understand his own rights and the importance of understanding from the people's generation now on to understand how it works, to look out for yourself, and to be better prepared for when you do go into this business, and not to be ripped off like so many in the past have. I mean, they've signed contracts, and I can remember George Clinton talking about, ooh, that was lightning. Yeah, it's raining out right now. George Clinton was talking about how he didn't have the rights to his music, and that battle and what that was like. And if anybody that knows George Clinton and some of the stuff that he produced back in the day, that we still is funky, and his funk is ham hocks and your cornflakes. That's how funky his stuff is. So, and if you don't understand that, that means you don't understand funk. So don't worry about it. All right. But you don't get any funkier than George Clinton. That just goes without saying. And he just at that time was very naive in understanding business, music, contracts. You know how to produce the music, you know how to play the music, you know how to make it all come together, but the business aspect of it, that's something else, where all the other people who know how to swindle you and know how to work the game get to use you and abuse you, and you only get some of the crumbs, and they get to live high and wide and long and off of you, but then you have to educate yourself. And so Prince, from what I understand in the conversation that I heard, many of them talk about them interviewing with on CNN, talk about how Prince really, really, really went hard and fought hard for his rights, for his name, and for his own music, and he got his music back. And unfortunately, him being only 57, I think 57 years old, passed away. As of the time of this show, we don't know why, what was an illness. And part of the talk was that just recently that he was only about 45, 48 minutes away from landing in Minnesota, but made a emergency landing to go to the hospital, supposedly for flu-like symptoms, and a few days before he passed away. But they say he seemed okay, and they found him in his elevator at his home, and so we're waiting for the autopsy to figure out like what happened to the icon Prince. When you think of Prince and his music, and for those who don't really know, if you Google Prince, you'll see that he produced so many others, people that you would really be surprised. The style of music, the different type of people that he wrote songs for as well. You'd be like, wow, did he write that song? Like, yes, he did. With the people that's in his group, in his circle, from Jimmy Jam to Terry Lewis and all those people, Morris Day and The Time, and to hear the story about The Time and how they brought Morris Day and Jesse in at the end with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, and how all that came about, and so on and so forth. But I say all of that and to say that, death is death, and it's, for some of us, it's certain, right then, and that particular moment, this day is like, wow, you woke up in the morning, and then in the middle of the day you get a phone call. There's times when you know that it's about to happen because of illness and people fighting cancer or whatever sickness that they may have, and so it's kind of expected over a gradual period of time, so you can kind of better prepare yourself for it, and which is never really easy, I can remember, show you how naive I am, is how stupid I am, and I say it like that, was that when my mother was battling cancer, and I hated that my mother smoked. I hated it with a passion. I hate it. That's just me. I hated her smoking, and eventually my mother stopped smoking in her latter years, but she ended up dying of lung cancer, and it spread through her body, and it really started to eat away, and you can see her suffering, and she was in pain, and so on and so forth. And then you get to a point where she finally does die, and you be like, thank you, Lord, for taking her out of this misery. And it's funny how life is, and funny how things work. A lot of people, I've only told this story maybe once or twice, maybe twice. Yeah, probably twice, and I'll say it again. My mother was battling cancer over this period of time, and you see her slowly going down. You see her, what's happening right before you. You see her body changing. She looks nothing like herself, which has nothing to do with the point. But you talking about what you see and what she's going through. And so I'm going to see her because she's in Georgia now, and it's getting to be the last stages of what this cancer is and what it's doing. And still in the back of your mind, I don't know, you know that the end is coming, but in your mind, the end is still 2, 3, 4 years away. That's how you process it. I don't know at that time, because you just never know. It's just like, well, God gonna give me one more day. 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 And so I'm going, and I see her this time. Hospice is coming in. The nurse is coming in every morning. But before that, I was coming to see her. And I was headed back home. I was leaving Georgia, headed back to Orlando. And so I got in the car, gassed up. I looked at my map, saw which way to go. I was looking at which way to go. And so I'm headed out of Macon, Georgia, and trying to get my bearings together. So I stopped at the light, right? I stopped at the light. I think I was the fourth car. I was probably like the fourth car in the lane. And so I look up, and I said, okay. But I stopped at the light. I looked down at the map to kind of get my bearings together. Say, oh, okay, this is what I need to do. Then I looked up at the light. The light was red still. And then I looked back down at the map. Okay. Then I looked back up, and the light turned green. Right? Then I looked back down to said okay, and then I pressed on the gas, and then guess what? I hit the car in front of me, because based on the timing, and you look up, you see the light turns green, and you know that the cars are going. You know that they're going. Well, the situation was, there was two elderly ladies. When I say elderly, they were very old ladies. As a matter of fact, the lady in the driver's side, in the passenger side, she was the owner of the car. She had her friend drive her. And both of them had to be I shouldn't say, they probably were like in the 80s, okay? Where most people would have gone, they were still there. So I rear-ended them, okay? Now I get out of the car, and I said, oh, I'm sorry. Now I see that there are two old ladies. Now I'm really like, oh my God, I hope these two old ladies are fine. Are you okay? The two old white ladies, by the way. And I was just like, oh my goodness, are you okay? You okay? You okay? I'm trying to see if they're okay. Well, because I really didn't get up that much of speed, but enough that I couldn't drive my car. I couldn't. My car was damaged, and I couldn't drive it. And to make a long story short, it's funny how God works. Because if I had left Georgia, I wouldn't have been there to see my mother pass. That's the moral of the story. But again, in my mind, because I'm still there, a day passed, I'm still there another day, because I'm not thinking in the sense that my mother is going to pass within this week. Okay? Even though the hospice is coming in, even though she's kind of there, but she's not there mentally. You know what I mean? She's, she has her moments. I think she still recognizes us, but she's really not saying anything at the time. And, in your mind, you say, one more day. One more day means one more day, one more week, one more month. For some odd reason, that's how you think. And so I'm like, okay. Yeah, I did get a ticket for rear-ending the car and da-da-da-da. So I am trying to find the best way to get home. I have to rent a car, by the way. I have to call my insurance and do all the things I need to do to get my car fixed and so on and so forth. And so this particular day, because I'm there now, it's September 10th. It's September 10th, 2001. September 10th, 2001. And we do this. The nurse come in like she does. She takes my mother vitals. And she getting ready to leave. And she comes over to me and she grabs my hand. And she said, I'm so sorry. And she goes, I think I'm like the third person or something like that. And I'm really not paying attention to her. And she has this look on her face. And she grabs my hand and she said, I'm so sorry. And I'm looking, and I'm not really catching on to what she's saying to me. You know, I'm just, just normal day, really not grasping what she is trying to say to me. She was saying my mother is dying. I didn't get that. You know, when she grabbed my hand, and I will always remember the look on her face, and she looked at me, and I'm looking at her like, why is she looking like that? You know, and she said, so she did, and then, you know, she left. Well, the rest of my siblings, the people that were there that was left, the only person that was there was the neighbor from next door who would come over and look after my mother from time to time, and myself. So I'm in the, about an hour or two later, maybe about like an hour and 10 minutes later, if that long, maybe an hour later, the person from next door calls me, Charles. She said, Charles, come here. And I said, what? And so I go in the room, and she goes, you know, we've already been told that if something happens, don't call 911. We've already been told, don't call 911. Okay. All right. So again, duh, not registering, duh. And I go in and I grab her hand. I say, Mom, you okay? Mom, you know, and she takes one deep breath. And she takes one deep breath. She takes one deep breath, and she was gone. That was it. And that moment at that time, it's hard to explain. Holding her hand and watching her take a deep breath, watching her take her last breath, there was something that I felt that came over me. And I mean, I can say it, but I really can't say it to explain it, because I don't know how to put it in words to explain it. It may not make any sense to anybody, but it makes sense to me. But it was just like, it was a moment in which I knew that I was going to see my mother again. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone that's watching this. But there was something in that moment that it wasn't even, at that time I wasn't even sad at that moment, because it was just, I'm sitting there and I'm watching her, and there was something in my spirit that says, well, I will see her again. And I haven't really shared that story maybe twice in my lifetime as I tell the story. You know what I did? I shared it at the funeral. I just remember saying that I did say it at the funeral, and I don't think I said it the way that I wanted to say it at the time because I had tears in my eyes and I was crying and the stuff wasn't coming out right in the first place and that kind of stuff. So my father had gotten to the point where he just, in his spirit, he just kind of gave up. And I think he was just ready to, go home. I kind of got that feeling from him. And unfortunately, I wish that I could have had him in a different place to have kept his spirits high. Because where he was and how things turned out, he was there for a while, for a period of, actually this made it, this month made it two years. He made it there April of 2 years ago. And his spirits went down. And when about 3 weeks ago, when I went to see him, he asked me, I walked in, he was still, spirits were still kind of high then. You got this is what he said to me. You got my death certificate? I said, Dad, they ordered a death certificate when you die. Well, you know what I mean, the place where, you got my papers to know where to bury me. I go, yeah, I got that. I got it. Yeah, okay. I was like, okay. That's when he started to go down. And he went into the hospital for an infection of his leg where he had sores from being bed sores. And he had had those for a long, long time. And unfortunately, they wasn't really being well taken care of. And they had to go in there and clean it up and put him on some antibiotics. And he just never really, he came home from the hospital, he just stopped eating. So he didn't have an appetite. And I went to see him on Friday, and I tried to feed him some soup. They brought him some broth, and they had actually, it was funny because my dad hates broccoli. I mean, he hates it. I mean, I love broccoli, but he hates broccoli. And so what they brought in was this big pork chop, which I know he wouldn't eat, some rice, and some mixed vegetables, mostly with broccoli. So the last time that I was there, because I would go see him once a week or so, once a week. And the week earlier, the week before last, he ate the chicken noodle soup while I was there. I fed it to him, he ate the whole bowl. So when they brought in the rice and the mixed vegetables with the broccoli and the big pork chop, I gave his pork chop away. They brought in, I asked them to bring in some broth, and they brought in the broth. And when I took the rice and I put it in the broth, and he was like, this is good. This is good. So he ate out of the bowl. He probably ate about maybe 10 spoons of it. So he really didn't eat that much, and he said he didn't want any more. And I made him drink, I didn't make him, I asked him to drink some water. He did drink a little bit of water. And you know what, that's the first time in the past few weeks that he didn't ask me to go get him a Coke. So I guess I should have asked him, I didn't even think about it. I should have asked him if he wanted a Coke, a Pepsi, a Coke, both for him the same. And he didn't ask. Normally, when he finished eating, he'll ask me to go downstairs and go to the Coke machine, and I buy him a can of Coke, and he would drink the whole thing, and he would always say, "Oh, this is so good," you know. And for my father, I am going to write a book. For those who know me, knowing that I've been talking about a book for years, and it's not just talk on the book. I just had to struggle within my spirit of this book that I've been wanting to write, that I started on several times. And in my spirit, I wanted it to be a right book. I can easily write the book and it probably would do very well, but I want it to be a purposeful, a book of purpose, and that I wanted it to be spiritually led, spiritually guided, and it can easily be taken as a tell-all book, but it wouldn't be serving the purpose of me writing it if in my spirit I don't feel right in how I'm writing it and doing it. And so far, I think I've come to a place, not just book about my father, but the book that I've been talking about for some years now. Because even when I thought of it years ago, and through the transition of becoming the person that I am, when I'm not that much different, in the sense that, you know, as you get older, you see the world different, you see yourself different, and your life changes. Same information, it's just being told in a different kind of way. You know, same information, just being told in a different kind of way. And that's what I always wanted. The information is there. The information will not change. It's just how you tell it is what makes all the difference in the world. And I just want to be mindful of what I put out there. Because the book is more about me and who I am. And part of that book has a lot to do with my father as well, because there's another book that I'm going to work on too. My father is in it, but it's more, the book is called The Sins of the Father. And just to understand recently, within the last year, just the last year, the information that I have found about myself and my family on my father's side, even some of the stuff on my mother's side, and my life, and the effect and the cause, and people not really understanding when it says the sins of the father. It's absolutely positively amazing how stuff fall downward. And if you don't understand some of the things and why they've taken place, I've always been a one to try to figure out, where did my personality come from? What traits and things that I learned or didn't learn, and why didn't I learn them? And why did I learn the things that I did learn? Where did it come from? But that's just my personality. I've always wanted to, I always stop to think about those type of things, as of, why do I think this way? Why do I feel this way? Why am I this way, that way? Where did that come from? Who did I pick that up from? But I've always been that way for as long as I can remember, of just wanting to just figure out life. And once you start to understand who God is, which seems to be a losing trend now. You know, there was something that I always wanted to say. I shouldn't say always wanted to say, but there's something that I wanted to put in my book. And people take it the wrong way, but I don't really matter. But I've come back here 10 times. I would never want to be a Donald Trump or a Kanye West. You know, let me be a homeless man on the street, But I would never, ever want to be a Donald Trump or Kanye West. And they're fine being who they are. Nothing bad against them in the sense of they can be who they want to be. But you have to be mindful when you're on that stage. You have to be mindful. And I just said, whether or not you Eddie Murphy or anybody on that stage, a Beyonce, a Mick Jagger, a Elvis Presley, a James Brown, a Prince, when God has given you that stage, you have to be mindful. Michael Jackson, you understand it, Janet Jackson, Nat King Cole, Ed Sullivan, Johnny Carson, Bill Cosby. Whenever you're given that stage, you have to be mindful of who you are in the sense of the cause and the effect. And when you're given that stage, what you say, whether or not you are Charles Barkley, whether or not you're Julius Erving, Muhammad Ali, Babe Ruth, when you're given that stage, you affect so many people in so many ways. You Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, it's all the same. Whether you Jim Brown, it doesn't matter. You have to be mindful. Now, you don't have to care, but you're gonna, at some point in time, whether you know it, understand it, believe it, live it, don't care, but at some point in time, you're gonna be held accountable somehow, some way. Now, for those who don't understand that, you can't say you haven't been told, because I'm telling you now, you're gonna be held accountable. It's like, I can't take the microphone, walk into the room and yell fire. I have the microphone. I have to be accountable for what I say when I hold the microphone. It's no different. If there's a room full of people, and if I have the microphone, and if the camera's on myself, if I'm on the blue screen, if I'm on television, if I'm on stage, if I'm on the radio, and I have that mic and that camera, I have to be accountable for what I say and what people see. That doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect, but if you go on, and if it's all about you, and you do what you want to do, based on the fact that you think you have this blessing that belongs to you, at some point in time, and it may not even be your generation then, at some point, somebody is going to pay for something that you did or said because you was not mindful, and for something that you put out there that eventually is going to come back. That's how life is. And if for anybody who has lived long enough to know that what goes around comes around. Excuse me. I have a aunt, and I love talking to her. She's 91 years old, and my aunt is a very wise woman. She's very wise. And I'm listening to her talk, and she's breaking down some things, and she has told me some things that I didn't know because she was around, well, and I'm talking about my family, around, she was married into the family. She was married into the family. So she was sharing some things that I didn't know about my family on my father's side. And with that being said, I have excuse me, not that you have to listen to me, but I'll say this. I have a person that I can go talk to. And here she is. She is 91 years old. And she said, Charles, I said, yes, ma'am. God answer prayers. I go, really? Yes. And she said it more than once. She said it more than twice. She said it more than 3 times. She has said it more than 4 times. God answer prayers. Be prayerful. And so now I can whatever, but I got a 91-year-old aunt who has way more wisdom than I will probably ever have. And she done lived 91 years. And one of the lessons that she has learned in those 91, God answer prayers. Would I not be a fool to listen to what she has to say? I would be a fool. And as I've taken this journey, as I dedicate this show to my father, it's been a rough road for me because I grew up without a father, you know. And I can tell the story, and believe it or not, this show, I'm venting. You know, my father passed away, and I'm venting right now, and I could sit right here without hesitation, easily. Not that anyone would be interested, but I could break down some stuff for you for the next 2 hours in reference to the impact of my life and not having a father. And he was right there, and I saw him. I saw him, and the impact of my life and the things that has transpired for me to be who I am, and to get to the point where I had to understand some things when it comes to my father. And so once I was informed, once I was told about his issues and his challenges, it better help me later on recently. This is recent because for a long time I was extremely angry. I never hated my father. I just didn't understand why he was never a father when he was right there, when to him he was. And when now I better understand, my father was the best father he knew how to be. He never tried to steer me wrong. He never tried not to. He just never knew how to. And since he was born with some challenges, mentally, physically, he was very much capable. But because of circumstances, situations, and his father, he was molded and shaped to not spread his wings. His mother did this to him. She grabbed a hold of her son in a loving, motherly kind of way, in what mothers do, and held on to my father and would not let my father go, loving him that way like mothers do, embracing him like mothers embrace him. And his father was the complete opposite. How dare I have a child that can't learn? Because his father was a scholar. His father was well educated. His father was brilliant, academically off the chart, but he had no understanding, no patience, and no will or determination to help his son, because to him, he should be able to throw a book in front of him and he should be able to grasp it, and that should be the end of the story. And through all of his academic ability, his grandfather, my grandfather, couldn't understand the simplest things, and he was a pastor, high up in the church. So it's not a knock on my grandfather. It's just the reality of who we are and the challenges that my dad faced that I had to come to understand of some of the little things that seem so simple for me and you and the next person was not simple for my father. But it took me up until recently. And my aunt had a conversation with me back in 2007 that kind of opened my eyes right before she passed to break some things down to better understand my father. And then my aunt that I was talking about, this 91, helped me recently to better understand. Because my father, who I needed and wanted to have as a father, just never knew how to be a father. So over the years, recently, people, when I would say some of the things that transpired or some of the things that didn't happen, some people would say, well, I don't understand how you could, because he didn't know any better. He was being the best father that he knew how to be. You know, he didn't know that he should talk to me. You know, I grew up as a jock, and I played basketball. My father has never seen me play basketball, other than peeping out the window, looking at me play in the backyard. So he never showed up to a basketball game. You know, he never played catch. I can remember just maybe about 6 years ago, because I'm still dealing with anger. I'm still frustrated. I'm still dealing with disappointment. This was maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. I was at his place, called his brother up so he could talk to his brother. And they're reminiscing back and forth. And they were talking about when they were kids. And he said, Decatur, remember when we caught that fish and we went fishing and da-da-da, and how much we loved the fish? And I looked at him and I wanted to leave, because I've been fishing all my life and my aunt taught me how to fish. I fish at least once a week, but my father never took me fishing. And he just made a statement how much he loved to fish, you know. And it's just little things. And like I said, I'm just talking like, once my aunt explained to me that my father operated on a mentality of about a 14-year-old, and then she explained to me why and some other things and all these things. And by the way, my aunt was a doctor, and so she had a pretty good idea of my father and his makeup, and she explained to me some things that no one ever told me, and that it was even to the point that, because he always lived underneath my grandmother, he never left there. Even me, by the time he got married, because he never married my mother. He stayed married for a little short time. When he moved away in his marriage, he didn't move far. Okay, and when that marriage, because he was married twice before his last marriage, that he got married in 1976. But he was still right around the corner from his mother. So he wasn't there. I mean, he didn't stay gone. He didn't move far. And when the marriage is ended, he was right back in the house with my grandmother. So, as my aunt said, it kept him next to her, but it also kept her being a mother. So she said they played off each other. They both had a way of needing each other, of a purpose. I go like, yeah, I guess, that makes sense. And so when she said what she said in reference to some other things that she shared with me, and then all of a sudden the light started coming on and the pieces start falling into place as I see my father, because I'm trying to understand, why do I feel so uncomfortable in this man's presence? Because growing up, he was extremely jealous. He was jealous. I figured it out, why he acted the way he acted, because he was jealous. The love that my grandmother was giving me was now taking away from him. With his child state of mind, which I didn't know at the time, he was jealous. And I was like, I didn't understand. I knew there was something wrong, but I didn't know what it was at the time. As I got older, I finally figured out that my father was jealous, that my grandmother loved me just like I was her own child. You know, and a lot of stuff that I'm leaving out. But I'm saying all of this to talk about how I had to grow, how I had to better understand, how I had to look beyond myself and my selfishness when it came to my father, and how I had to love him. And it's never that it's not that I never did love him. I just didn't understand because I needed him. There's really nobody else really in my family, you know, when it comes to, you know, just having a relationship. And so here it is now, and I'm talking about dealing with my anger. I'm talking about just 4 years ago. I'm sitting in church. I'm like this for a long time. I go to church every Sunday. I mean, I'm prayerful every day, and I still go see my father, but I'm asking God, what's up with this? And I'm so angry. I'm hurt. In his presence, I can only stay for a short time because I'm so hurt inside. And I finally had to grow up to stop being so selfish and better understand some things about the mentality and the makeup of my father and why these things are this way. Because he never purposely tried not to. And I have quite a few stories that I could share with you that you'll probably go, really? Because nobody would ever believe it when I would tell you how young-minded my father was, because he has everybody fooled. If you're around him, you would never know. My father was a preacher. Nobody knew about his shortcomings if you really didn't pay attention. If you paid attention, maybe. But he had some shortcomings. He never learned how to write a check. You can't have him deal anything business-wise. A lot of things he just didn't understand. He always worked. He always was a hard-working man. He always tried to do right. So he was a kind, gentle spirit, very arrogant because he learned that from his father, but not arrogant the way that it sounds. It's really hard to explain, but I dedicate this show to him, and I pray and I know that he's resting in peace, and I know that he's in a better place. I am putting together his funeral, and I'm not quite sure who's going to show up, but it doesn't matter. I am at peace with my father. I know that he is with his siblings, with his mother, and with his father. And I know, just like when I sat there and I saw my mother as she took her last breath, that there would be a grand reunion of myself and all of us at some point in time. And then maybe at that point in time, we can finally play catch or something like that, and so on and so forth. But with that being said, I really had no idea what I was going to talk about or what I was going to say tonight. Again, I'm Charles Morse, and you're watching The Journey 2020. I was talking about my father, who recently passed. I was talking about Prince, who recently passed, and how it is, and my mother, who passed back in 2001 on September 10th. That's always a weird time for me when 9/11 comes around, because it's always a reminder of my mother and that funny feeling of that morning when 9/11 happened, because that morning, September 10th, when my mother passed away, you're in this different world, wherever you are, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. And then you wake up the next morning and you in some funky place emotionally, and wherever you are. And then you turn on the TV, and there you see these planes flying into the World Trade Center. I mean Twin Towers. You see them flying into the Twin Towers, and it's just so eerie feeling, emotion. And so whenever 9/11 happens, I still can remember that place that I was in that you can't put into words. So that's always a kind of a interesting time of the year, moment for me. And so with that, I just wanted to sit, and I kind of was all over the place, but that was kind of therapeutic for me. And again, I'm Charles Morris, with the Journey 2020. Dr. Robinson called me today and said that he's still extremely busy with his building, the services that he is providing, the blessings that he is receiving so he can bless others. And so we want to thank God for that. And, I'm going to tell Dr. Robinson, and we have in the past when I've had my pastor on, is we get to close with a prayer. And we actually should open with a prayer and close with a prayer. And so with that being said, I actually have hair now. I decided to let my hair grow out for a minute. And dear Lord God, Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and this moment. Lord, we just ask that you continue to help us and guide us. Help us, Lord God, Heavenly Father, as we deal with this country as during this election time. And with that, Lord, we kind of see the true forces and the true battles that we have of this nation as we kind of, without a doubt, really expose who we are and how we are. And so many things, Lord, that may have been covered are now uncovered. And for those who better understand who you are and who you want us to be, and those who are really spiritual, really can see how this country is and how far we have to go and how prayerful we really need to be. And so with that, Lord, I ask that you give me strength, Lord, to continue to do what I need to do in order to straighten things out, to be where I need to be in order for things to happen, to bury my father. I pray for this nation. I pray for my pastor and our church. I pray for my family and my friends. I pray for, Lord, those who are able to hear the sound of my voice, and for, Lord, for those who are the believers. I pray, Lord, and ask that for us to share with others who you are. But, Lord, nothing can be done until you speak to those that you want to speak to. And I pray that that will happen, Lord, and I also pray that when you do speak, that you will be heard, as well as when you speak to me, that I'm quiet enough to hear the sound of your voice. And with that, Lord, I just ask for the blessing of this day, continuous blessings. Thank you in your name. Amen. And with that, my friends, I thank you. And as Dr. Robinson would say, the journey is from me to you and from you to me, so we can reach a higher level. Have yourself a great week. God blessings to you. And thank you for watching. I'm Charles.